Hello and welcome. I'm Geeta Mohan and you're watching India Today Global. Beginning with Nepal, ending political uncertainty and following the fall of KP Sharma Oli government after violent protests, former Supreme Court Chief Justice Sushila Karki took oath as Prime Minister. She is now the interim Prime Minister of Nepal, making her the first woman to lead the country. The historic decision was reached through a consensus between Gen Z protest leaders, President Ramchandra Paudel and the Army Chief of Nepal, Army Chief Ashok Raj Sigdal. Sushila Karki also is the first woman to have held the post of the Chief Justice of Nepal in 2016. The interim government in Nepal to be in place for 6 months, and then there will be fresh elections which will be held in the nation after that. And we have Amit Bharadwaj, our reporter who's been reporting relentlessly from Nepal, joining us from Kathmandu. Amit, the big decision that we were talking about yesterday has come through. Karki has taken oath. What lies ahead? The parliament has been dissolved, so she will need a team of people to really take the country into elections. How is that going to happen?
Geeta, if you would remember right here on your show, I had said yesterday that Sushila Karki's name has been finalized, and all that awaits is the framework that's being discussed between the Gen Zs and the army leadership and the president, and more so Sushila Karki herself. And that framework was the reason why she was requested by the army right in the morning around 7 a.m. because I had gone to meet her in the morning as well. But before I could reach her residence, the Nepali army had already requested for her to leave and go back for the work which was most important for every citizen of Nepal. And that work through the day was actually worked out properly. All blockades in the pathway, be it the legal blockades or bringing people on board, everything was done properly, and the framework, draft framework, was already, prepared. And now we see the presidential order has been issued. She is the Prime Minister of the interim government of Nepal. So no change in the terminology. The interim government will be in place for 6
anyway
months.
Does not allow it.
There will be fresh elections. That has been, yes.
Right, Amit, the visuals are telling it's
Yes.
not just the oath taking. The foreign envoys, all the foreign heads of missions in Kathmandu lined up to meet and to greet the new Prime Minister of the interim government, clearly suggesting that they are seeking and want stability in that country.
Absolutely right. You had all the VIP guests, diplomats based out of Kathmandu from different countries, and several other stakeholders whose presence was very much required to repose faith in this interim government. And I must tell this to our viewers that it was not a random decision which happened from one side or the other. There were constant pressure by the Gen Z groups as well that this particular interim government oath taking by Sushila Karki as the Prime Minister needs to be given as much value as possible, and that is why the whole resources were put in. And this is also through my conversation with the top leaders within the core committee of Gen Z. We might believe or think that these are novice kids who one day decided to throw out the political elite of Nepal. But let me assure you, after several rounds of conversation with these youngsters, I can certainly tell that they have come here with a very prepared mindset. They have the understanding of international affairs. Yes, they would not be domain experts of that particular issue, but they have the basic understanding at this point in time. And that is why you had the presence of all those diplomats as well. Back to you.
Right, Amit Bharadwaj. Thank you so much for reporting from Kathmandu. We'll keep coming back to you and dipping into you as and when we see developments coming in from Nepal. Now, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has once again stirred controversy, facing criticism not only from the international community, but also from longtime ally, the United States of America, and President Trump himself. He asserted that there won't be any Palestinian state despite widespread support from Western countries to now recognize Palestinian statehood at the upcoming or the ongoing United Nations General Assembly.
A day after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dared Qatar to either expel Hamas or face consequences, he has once again ignited widespread controversy and criticism. During his visit to the Male Edumim settlement in the occupied West Bank, Netanyahu formally signed an agreement to advance a major settlement expansion plan. The new plan encroaches on land that Palestinians claim for a future state.
We said there would not be a Palestinian state, and we say again there won't be a Palestinian state. This place is ours. We will take care of our country and our security and our heritage.
Last month, Israel's Defense Ministry Planning Commission approved the long-stalled E1 project, which would add 3,412 housing units in a 12 square kilometer zone between East Jerusalem and Male Edumim. Netanyahu's announcement comes as countries like Australia, Belgium, Canada, France, and the United Kingdom have signaled their intention to formally recognize Palestinian statehood at the upcoming UN General Assembly later this month. Meanwhile, trouble for Netanyahu deepens after the Israeli military strike on Qatar's capital, Doha. Israel's closest ally, the United States, has distanced itself from Israel following the attack. The criticism has also echoed in the United Nations Security Council. The Qatari Prime Minister accused Israeli leaders of showing they do not care about the hostages held in Gaza after targeting Hamas officials in Doha.
السيد الرئيس أقف أمامكم اليوم.
The continuation of such attacks does not only target Qatar, it is a clear threat to target any country that is working on achieving peace.
واستهداف دولة ذات السيادة في وضح النهار.
Even as pressure mounts on Prime Minister Netanyahu, he remains defiant, showing no indication that Israel will change its course amid growing international condemnation. With Neha Kumari, Bureau Report, India Today.
And Dr. Wael Awad, West Asian expert, senior journalist, now joins me for more on this. Dr. Awad, we discussed this earlier as well, that lack of international outrage. Now, we are seeing outrage. We're seeing some countries come out and say they're going to really recognize Palestine as a state. But then you have Netanyahu saying that he's going to annex the whole of Palestine.
That's absolutely the whole plan. And he had deceived the whole world opinion that he's after Hamas, and the fact of the matter remained that he wanted to annihilate the whole of Palestine. What happening in Gaza Strip is absolutely well planned, and it has been executed because he said it will be the total destruction of Hamas, and the infrastructure of livelihood of the Palestinian is totally destroyed, and then there will be an expulsion of the Palestinian because he already displayed the map of a greater Israel from Euphrates to Nile. Then secondly, Gita, he talks also of the West Bank. I mean, if we are concentrating only on the Gaza Strip, we know that it is because of Hamas. But what about the West Bank, where there is no Hamas forces are there? It's just the Palestinian Authority, where he's asking the Palestinian Authority to vacate their headquarters from that side because there is a Smotrich, his finance minister, and Ben Gavir, the intelligence the chief. He is also asking him, he's a minister. The both of them asking for the expansion of Israeli settlement and conquering of the West Bank into Israeli territory. So therefore, there is no question of Palestine for any Israeli leader.
Right, but Dr. Awad, how can Netanyahu be stopped? We've not seen anybody really stopping him. In fact, we've seen many countries arming Israel despite and in spite of all the condemnations. Over here also, he's going ahead with his plan despite the fact that there are countries, even the United States of America, that's now distancing itself from these statements.
Well, absolutely. I think there is nobody can stop Netanyahu because he believes and he knows that the moment he stops the war in the Middle East, he will be out of power. His political career will be ended because there are lots of cases against him in the Israeli court. and he thinks that he have the divine spirit that he will be achieving Israeli ambition and as a leader of Israel. So therefore, they're difficult to stop him, Gita, except for the Israeli public opinion. If the Israeli people go into the street and topple him, then that's the only way out to stop him, because the American president, he already endorsed all his plan and he's giving him the green signal to go anywhere. He attacked Qatar, he can attack anywhere in the world with the American blessing.
Well, again, Dr. Awad, the United Nations General Assembly is in session. A lot of countries are going to recognize Palestine as a state. What will it take for countries, for the international community, and particularly for Israel to recognize the fact that these countries have recognized Palestine and this annexation should stop?
Well, the whole issue of Israeli existence actually came to existence in 1948 on the division of Palestine into two states, where 55% of the territories were given to the minority Jew under the condition that the Palestinian state should coexist with the Israeli under the 45%. But here you go. There will never been any acceptance of any Palestinian state. 1948 massacre continued, the Nakba, the catastrophe continued, and now we are seeing the next catastrophe happening in genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza. So, and the whole of Palestinian territory, what you want to do with 6 million Palestinians inside Palestine? I think they're going to be a very difficult situation for Israel. It is more now internationally have been isolated. United States have been isolated because of its total stand behind Netanyahu. All this is having a great impact on the future of the international law and also on the new world order, where the American, seriously, can anybody trust the American anywhere in the world anymore after even attacking Qatar, which is considered to be the custodian of the American?
Well, that's a very important point you make. It seems like no matter what these countries are saying, the Americans continue to support Israel. Dr. Wael Awad, thank you so much for joining us with that perspective. I too have a perspective on this entire matter, and that has to do with what India's position is on Palestine. We've changed positions, we've shifted our stance. And how does it really stack up when it comes to looking back in history? And now there has been international outrage, but where is India in all this outrage? You can watch the entire show on India Today Global's YouTube channel. Do also subscribe if you're interested in international stories. But for now, my take on the current crisis in Gaza. India once stood shoulder to shoulder with Palestine, a champion of anti-colonial solidarity and non-alignment. It was the first non-Arab state to recognize the PLO in 1974 and among the earliest to recognize the state of Palestine in 1988. Yet, in 2025, as bombs flatten Gaza and 147 nations line up to recognize Palestine at the United Nations this year, New Delhi's voice has grown quieter, measured, hedged, and abstaining. The moral compass of the global south now seems calibrated to arms deals, investment pacts, and Washington's gaze. India calls for dialogue, but stops short of naming atrocity. How long can this balancing act last before it collapses under its own contradictions? And will India finally speak up against Israeli brutality? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. The world is shifting. France, Australia, Canada, and even parts of the UK establishment are preparing formal recognition of Palestine at the 2025 UNGA, which is underway. Pakistan, China, Russia, and much of the Arab world already vote 100% pro-Palestine despite US pressure. Yet India, once Palestine's loudest friend outside the Arab bloc, has abstained 4 times on Gaza ceasefire votes in 2 years. Modi visited Tel Aviv without Ramallah in 2017, then staged a separate balancing visit to Ramallah in 2018. In the face of mounting civilian deaths and war crime accusations, how much abstention is too much before India's credibility as voice of the global South snaps? India's early Palestine policy was forged in the fire of anti-colonial struggle. In 1947, New Delhi opposed the UN partition plan for Palestine and voted against Israel's admission to the United Nations, aligning with the Arab bloc. In 1974, India became the first non-Arab state to recognize the PLO as the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. By 1988, India was among the first countries to recognize the state of Palestine itself. Ever since Israel started its crusade against Gaza in 2023, it has turned India's balancing act into a stress test. As civilian casualties soared and international organizations accused Israel of war crimes, the United Nations General Assembly tabled a resolution demanding an immediate, unconditional ceasefire, release of hostages, and humanitarian access. India abstained, its fourth such abstention on major Gaza votes since 2023. Officially, India still supports a negotiated two-state solution and condemns civilian deaths, but it avoids naming Israel as the perpetrator, preferring symmetrical calls for restraint by all parties. Supporters say New Delhi is being pragmatic, protecting vital defense ties and US goodwill. Yet each abstention chips away at the credibility India built over decades as Palestine's friend. The question lingers, is New Delhi's policy still balanced, or has it tipped into complicity? It does, as it should, however, condemn Hamas's October 7, 2023 attack as terrorism, reflecting its zero-tolerance line on terror. India still has options. It can continue abstaining, hoping its statements of deep concern will suffice, or it can recalibrate, using its ties with Israel to press for ceasefire compliance, humanitarian access, and concrete movement toward a two-state solution. The question is no longer whether India supports a two-state solution in words, but whether it will act, vote, pressure, and lead when it matters. How much is too much? The answer may define India's place in the world for years to come. Thank you for watching Statecraft. Now, days after US President Donald Trump's closest ally and Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk was shot dead in public, the US federal and local authorities announced that Kirk's shooter was arrested. Confirmation came hours after President Trump claimed the shooter was turned in by a family member. This development follows the Federal Bureau of Investigation's release of photos and videos showing the suspect. In the footage, the man is seen wearing a baseball cap and a black sweatshirt featuring an American flag and an eagle. The video also shows the suspect running across a rooftop before jumping and escaping. Box versions of your friends. It is all thanks to the new nano banana trend. What started as a playful AI experiment has now exploded into a full-blown internet obsession. People everywhere are using Google's Gemini AI tool, Nano Banana, to transform everyday photos into ultra-realistic collectible action figures, from anime-inspired pets to Spider-Man trapped in an acrylic box. This trend lets you bring your wildest ideas to life. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Today Global. But before I go, here is another report. When you slip your phone or keys into your pocket, do you ever wonder why women's clothes so often don't come with that same convenience? It turns out pockets aren't just a fashion detail. They've been a battleground for freedom, function, and even feminism. Kshitija Gosavi with this report. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
It's called pocket inequality. While men carry their lives in their pockets, women are often left juggling phones, wallets, and keys. That frustration, well, it's centuries old. Back in the 1600s, women actually wore pockets, but not the kind we think of today. They were giant pouches tied under layers of skirt. To get inside, you had to reach through a slit in your dress. Convenient? Not quite. As fashion slimmed down in the 18th and 19th centuries, those pockets disappeared. Instead, tiny decorative handbags, the reticules. Pretty, but they could barely hold a handkerchief. But then came the women's rights movement. Suffragettes demanded real pockets, calling them a symbol of independence. Because if men could carry their money, pens, and power in theirs, why couldn't women? World wars put women in factories and fields, and with that came practical clothing, with plenty of pockets. But after the wars, designers shrank them down again. Some say to boost handbag sales, others say to keep women dependent. Fast forward to today, women still ask, why are our pockets too tiny for a phone, while men can fit a wallet, keys, and more? Now a new wave of designers is saying enough is enough. Fashion, they argue, should give women style and storage. Because really, who wants a fake pocket stitched shut? With Chituja Gosavi, Bureau Report, India Today.